Good evening. This is Harriet Tubman. I'm going to be channeling part 2 of Harriet Gets Sent Abroad to Aid Distressed Families. We read you part 1 of a 2-part series, possibly 3 parts. I want to offer a disclaimer for Omiinka Sherelle Garth. This here theoretical sitcom is based on a true story. The names have been protected, and for the viewing of their identity, they have been left out. They in no way are giving any consent. This is a satire where a one woman will be discussing Sherelle Garth and her family's experience while overseas during 9/11. Harriet Tubman, was summoned to go in and work with the EEOC department. This case had been slung from every judicial system, from the lower courts to the higher courts, and then when she came back to the States, she was still fighting this case. Now, I've been called in because I'm a mediator. I'm not no judge, and I don't sit on the bar, and I'm not a member of the bar, and I'm certainly not a lawyer. But I can be an advocate, and that's what I'm being today. And I want it noted for the record that I called in as an advocate, not as a member of the bar, so that it won't get misconstrued that I am practicing law. I am representing a family who is in dire needs and distress. And they were overseas while these things happened, and no one came to their rescue. They were left and forgotten. So now Omiinka decides to tell her story through me to get some relief for the family and get the pressure off the family. You don't know what you go through when you have your children taken out of the only public school overseas under the military, when they cannot enter enrollment into any school and have to spend a whole year out of school. You don't know what it's like when the breadwinner's job is being taken from her, and her not being able to take care of her family while abroad. It is something like putting outside of the gate, like what they did to Lazarus when they knew he would surely die, being disconnected and outside of the gates. But this family, they prevailed, and support came through their senator, and they were not put outside the gate to suffer. But God saw a way to send me to aid these families. And when you're in trouble, you go to the EEOC, but you better also ask for your senator to intervene on your behalf. During 9/11, many of the families were compensated, and many of them were grouped together and put in vans and taken off the grounds of Germany for their protection. But this family was left behind intentionally, in spite of her asking the colonel to aid and assist her family in removing them from the country so they can get out before those sleepers came out trying to attack civilians. Certain civilians were under more attack than others, and they did have the help of the government moving them to safer grounds, but this family was not moved to safer ground. They had to find their way out through the Germans, and they had to put their things in storage based on the German not being able to take that 18,000 pounds of household good with them, leaving everything they owned behind, and having the Germans to take out their security deposit in marks and give them the monies to purchase their tickets to return back home. It should have been the military plane that took them back home. They shouldn't have had to go to the Germans for aid and assistance. This story is being told today and is not being forgotten because she went through all the judicial settings and went to the table of discussion so that there was going to be a settlement. But even at the table of discussion, they reneged and pulled their offer back, even after they had substantiated it with her lawyer. So where is the settlement? And why wasn't it given to the family? And why did the family have to come back here, lose everything they own, empty-handed, without a chair or a couch? And why did they have to come back without the settlement money that was on the table? And we are going to get to the bottom of this to let the world know you cannot ask civilians to go abroad who are going to put their lives on the line for a government and who are going to work feverishly, not 8 hours a day, but 10 hours a day to accommodate the United States Army. So we're telling our story today. It never got told. A lot of you military people that were supporting this family, you probably want to know what happened to them and what was the outcome and how did they fare. Well, we're going to tell the story today unmolested because we have a right to. There was no settlement completed. So everything that needs to be said will be said today, and we will not be molested or harmed. If anything, the settlement will get back on the table and they will come back and do the right thing because this family has been damaged. You don't damage young children by removing them from a school system and not allowing them to go to a German school system. You just don't do that. You don't take a family's mailbox from them and close their bank accounts down and leave them helpless while abroad without any support. Well, I do have to give credit to the Germans because they did come to this family's aid. And even though, in spite of the fact that they entered on radio stations to tell about their plight, no help was sent to them. None, nada. And that's why this story had to be told today and had been called in here to intervene as her advocate for the family. So when you hear me say that I'm working in the EEOC department, I am, because I intervene on her behalf to represent her. Because right now, somebody needs to know about this. Maybe they can tell the president, you did not do fair by the Garth family. You did not accommodate them after her case was won and it was shown that there was across the board discrimination, partiality against Black women and Black men for over a decade. So now the story can be told. Maybe you will have enough dignity to come back to Mrs. Garth and say, I'm sorry for ruining your career. I'm sorry for cutting your years short and your contract being void. I'm sorry. Maybe you can say that. And hopefully she'll forgive you because I can't forgive you. I don't have it within me. Harriet is upset about the whole thing. And that's why I opt to keep Mrs. Garth out as much as possible and to tell her story because it must be told, either written or put in a book form or ebook. But this way, those who don't read can hear it on air. And there will not be any names given of the other victims. Only Omiinka will talk about her and her family. So you cannot accuse her of exposing information that was not given permission. She's going to tell you about the case and take it point for point and what the allocations were. And after EEOC went to investigate, what did they find? Why wasn't it publicized? What did they find and why did they not tell the community that Mrs. Garth has been exonerated from all of these false counts of perjury? Why wasn't it publicized so that her name and reputation could be cleared? Well, we're going to clear her name and reputation this day. And we're going to give you the findings of the EEOC. And I am here to tell you that they found that these were perjuries, and people went after statements from people on the base by offering them a payment to give a false statement. And there were many of the people that came and refused the payment and actually said, I'm going to report this. And they have documented that someone approached them to give a false statement against this family and against this worker, causing her not to complete her probationary period of June the 8th. It was 5 days prior to her probationary period being successfully completed. Now, you know this was a conspiracy. You know that this was an attempt to prevent her from being able to be a member of the union, to get the help from the union and the support from the union. You left her overseas in an unfamiliar place where she had to contact attorneys without the funds to do so and without the means. But nevertheless, because of her connection to the legal system, she was able to get those necessary representative and counsel to aid her all the way through 5 years of this case. 5 years. So this story must be told. Someone think that they got the better half and it's been stagnated and sitting there, but yet they tried to destroy her credibility by putting this information on the internet and openly talking about the denial of the approval for renewing the orders. But they didn't tell the true story about what was behind taking the orders away. They shouldn't have never been taken away. Mrs. Garth did a fantastic job for this service called the United States Army. She put her family on the line and risked them going abroad. And she worked 10 hours a day to help them come up to par to alleviate this department for being cited for non-compliance. She put in the energy and she put in the work. So that's why I was called. That's why Harriet was called, because I'm a fighter. And Harriet's called to speak this thing to truth, to knowledge, so that people will know what really happened during these 5 years of investigation. She had quite a few friends out there that inquired about what was the outcome. She had quite a few people that came to her bank accounts and deposit money there to help this ailing family. She had quite a few soldiers that came to her rescue, that supported her and backed her, and also gave testimonies against these lies. So why would you create an atmosphere to find a reason for you not allowing this good employee to move on to the level of completing her compliances with those 1 year service? Why would anyone intervene and stop that? Why? Because they did not want to even have to explain why the promotion she was supposed to get was given to somebody who didn't put their time in and who was brought from the state and who was of a different race and nationality, and they didn't earn that right to take that promotion. But those who were there struggling, working hard, like Mrs. Garth, should have been promoted, and they weren't. Yes, we're going to tell the story today. We're going to tell the story today in a satire. And I am Harriet Tubman, and I will be the broadcaster today behind this audio tape. Now, in order to protect the family of Mrs. Garth, every one of them were damaged and injured. Even her husband, who had to watch this go on and who had to struggle and take a job with atheists. And then they tried to do the same thing. And then she had to bring arbitration against them. Why is there so much fighting for African Americans when they go abroad to support the United States Army? Why? Is it because they think they can get away with it? No, not this time. Everybody's going to know the outcome. And Mrs. Garth and her family win. They win. And every one of the allegations that were put out have been overturned and have been falsely submitted. So perjury was submitted in an effort to get rid of Mrs. Garth and her position and hand her job over to some people that came from the States who had not put their time in and who just walked into a position, and they slung their weight around and they eliminated every one of those black managers from their job and dismissed them and came in and hired their own white people. It's wrong. And this is a part of Juneteenth that's real. And things happen like this and they go unnoticed or talked about. So they suppressed the evidence, but they didn't waste any time to put online the fact that they refused to give me a renewal on those orders. But you know what? Even if they never gave her the orders, Mrs. Garth was able to get back home with the support of the Germans who gave her security deposit back, enough money to pay for tickets to get back home. They didn't realize she had an ace in the hole. But we're going to get into it today. And I want you to know that I am going to be intervening on behalf of this family because I've been brought in as a colonel. I am Harriet Tubman, and Harriet Tubman has been brought in on a number of different occasions. And this occasion, this is a satire, and the names of those who are involved will be protected and they will not be released. But Omiinka, Sherelle Garth and her family will release their name because they've already put it out there. And we're going to let you know we won this case and that they put money on the table and they reneged and pulled it off the table because they did not want to admit any false dealings in what they did. So they offered a settlement. So where is that settlement? And why isn't it still there? And why haven't you released it to Mrs. Garth? And why have you had her think, yes, we investigated. Yes, we found discrimination. Yes, you were discriminated against. But then they decided that they wanted to pull back the hand that they were releasing the money with. So we're going to tell our story, and hopefully someone may want to intervene and help us to write the story and theatrical part of it. So let's get on with the story. This is Harriet Tubman, and I'm coming at you from Spreaker. And Spreaker, this is something unique where we have theatrical drama, but let it roll because it might make a difference on these airways today. And we are surely going to expose what should have happened to Mrs. Garth. And her class action suit was dismissed because they did not want to show any areas of typicality and commonality. But nevertheless, she went on with the individual case. And we'll be talking from the perspective of the individual case. So join me as we go in the room right now. I'm Harriet Tubman. I'm going to settle myself down because I've been rather upset. I've been so upset because one thing after the another keeps coming up on what has happened almost 20 years ago that we get a chance to discuss the outcome. Now, I will say this much. I had spoken to the EEOC counselor. She told me I had every right to advocate on behalf of this family. And she did her research too. And you'd be surprised at what she found. She went through every department in child development to find out who were those people that were discriminated against. And lo and behold, she found out that there was a lot of black managers that were leaving their jobs unexplainable. They were just checking out, taking their families home. This is called a genocide when you displace families and especially taking their children out of college or out of school. This is the displacement. There were about 4 other managers that were displaced. And one in particular, I'm not going to name her name, that I'm very, very secure. I'm very, very inquisitive about. She was a worker bee. She was one of the providers that provided child care. One of the best child care workers. They had her name up in lights. Do you hear me? And then she was suddenly attacked. After telling everyone she's the best in her field and writing her up saying she's outstanding, and then trying to set her up by submitting a sick child into her child care. And she knew the rules, so she said, no, this child cannot come into this family child care. This child is on medicine. He cannot be admitted to this family child care. Lo and behold, they tried to do everything they could do to put that sick child in her home so they could later come back and say that she was in violation, and because of non-compliance, they were going to shut her down. When she decided not to take this child in, she phoned Mrs. Garp and said, look, there is a problem with this child coming in my class because regulations say he can't come. He can't come. I agree. Mrs. Garp agreed with her and said, you're right. He cannot come. You must not admit a sick child on medicine into your school. But nevertheless, management supported this and they encouraged it. And when this provider decided not to take the child, she was then cited for non-compliance and they shut her child care down. In the meantime, because Mrs. Garf stood up for her and spoke out on her behalf, management was up in arms with Mrs. Garf about supporting regulation, which is less than what they did. In the meantime, provider number 1 went over to EEOC and stated her case about them shutting her down. And while she was waiting to go over, someone came to her home and asked her if she would give a false statement against Mrs. Garf and that they would support her and give her a large sum of money and that her school would not be closed. This provider number 1 said, no deal. I won't undermine Mrs. Garf, the teacher who has taught me everything I know and supported me in helping me to open up this family child care. I will not. You can keep your money. I won't take your money. I'm going to see you in court. This provider number 1 stood out front, and the word got out that an offer was being made to this provider. And this provider made it known that they had falsified these allegations and were going out to get testimonies against Mrs. Garf. Now, in the meantime, some soldiers showed up. This management even had the nerve to put false allegations in there that they claimed that the soldiers made statements. The soldiers came back and said, I never made a statement to that effect, and I will not support that false allegation. So this kept happening, one allegation after another. People that she had pretended that she had secured a statement against were turning her out and refusing to give any testimony. And her actual alimony was falling out from the bag because these allegations were not standing up. But yet this is what she used to terminate Mrs. Garf's 3-year contract. In the meantime, she thought she would clean house and get rid of all the other blacks at the same time because she refused to keep them on and she wanted to bring her own staff on. Now, this went on for about a year of getting testimonies from each one of these so-called false allegations. None of them held up. They all were washed down. Nevertheless, Mrs. Garf did not stop fighting. She secured an attorney and she took them each level. They denied the actual class action, of course, but they did finally agree to accept Mrs. Garf's individual's case. Now, in the meantime, working from the state side and trying to get your attorney to work with you while abroad is very difficult. Mrs. Garf carried that case. She did the briefs. She did the interrogatories. She carried that case as she went to JAG to prepare her case. And each step of the way, she overturned every one of those false allegations. So the people that were standing there with mud on their face began to say, well, we should settle. Let's try to settle this case because these cases cannot be substantiated. They're false allegations. And they wrote them down. The EEOC came to me and said, hey, we ain't found nothing that could be conceived as misconduct. If anything, there were women paid money, cash money, to go and get reconstructions on their breasts to give a false testimony. And we're going to have to bring this case to an end. Harriet said, yes, you show you right. We got to bring this to an end because this is highway robbery and something got to be done about it. But was anything done? Was anything done to these women who came in and made up these false allegations? Did they lose their job? Did they get suspended? Or were they dismissed from the military altogether? No, they were kept on and they did not get reprimanded. But Mrs. Garf lost everything she had. She lost all her household goods, 18,000 pounds. She lost her apartment. She lost the house that they had built for her. She lost everything. And then, in spite of that, she went on to volunteer for the Red Cross and for the school district, helping them along the way, even though she was being tormented, her and her family, by this United States Army group of women that should have been chastised and they should have been put in their place. You cannot have a group of white women coming down in drag, telling the military what to do. And the military cannot shrink on this opportunity to put them in their place. When you have good black workers, you cannot let a group of hoodlums come down trying to character assassinate good black employees. They should have did something to those women. They should have stopped them. But they didn't. They carried on business as usual. But nevertheless, it was proven that these allegations were all false and lies. And Mrs. Garf should have been given her job back. She should have been given her pay back and any interest with losses of any of her benefits. This caused her to lose her pension overseas because she could not transfer any of the years back to the state. This is a tragedy, people. This is a tragedy. And Harriet is going to tell you that. It's a tragedy. And it should have never happened. But look how long they kept it under the lid and kept it a secret. And they thought that it would just go away. But things do come back to visit you. And things will come up when you least expect them. This family was tortured by their own United States Army representative. And those women were brought on by the United States Army. They could have did something about it. They hired them. And they prevented all the black women from getting their proper promotions. And they dismissed them so that they wouldn't be in line for a promotion. But some of the men came back and supported this. They too were shown partiality. They weren't, whenever you had any of the white workers who were providers who were put on probation for doing things that were wrong, instead of them sitting them at home without pay, they put them in other positions with pay. They never lost a minute of their income But the blacks who were brought up on any charges were automatically dismissed, hands down, no questions asked. And when jobs came available that the blacks who were in position for, they were denied an opportunity to interview. They found all this out. Over 2 decades, this kind of thing had been going on. This is what Mrs. Garth walked into in a department of distress. Trying to recoup this department, developing training, one of the first training centers ever overseas, putting women through training to get their license and credentials while working 10-hour shifts to make sure that each one of these women had the proper training to run their family child care and their center child cares. No one could understand that this was a silent act done quickly and covered up, all while Mrs. Garth was trying to establish herself, and her benefits were denied for her travel, trying to travel back to the States to make it to her sister's funeral. They denied her that opportunity. There's been so much wrong done where they have taken away funds that should have been released to her family. So what I'm saying is that this is being reported because this case should have been out in the open. This case should have never closed with them taking the offer off the table. They should put that offer back on the table and double it because they have caused this family to lose money. And at the same time, here this family decided to put their lives on hold to come abroad to aid and assist the United States Army. Now, we're not going to sit here and give any names of the other people because their names are being protected. But we're talking about the Garth family today and the wherewithals that should have been on the table for this family. Isn't it terrible that she had to turn around and fight atheists too in an arbitration to release her husband's money? Now, we're giving you this information because Harriet is here now. Harriet gonna make a difference. Harriet gonna press the point and Harriet gonna talk about it because I'm a part of that EEOC team that did research and I have a right to talk about it. Now, if somebody don't like what I'm saying and say, Harriet, you ought to go somewhere and sit down, I'm already sitting down. I am a ghost coming back from the grave as an ancestor. Ain't nothing you can do to me because I'm an ancestor child. And I'm not here now, but I can be in more than one place. And if any of y'all think about trying to do something to Harriet, come on, bring it on. Because Harriet gonna be ready for you. Because this spirit of Harriet is gonna come back to that judicial system and make them do what they're supposed to do in the first place. And come back to that EEOC department and say, release that woman's money. Cut the check and release her money. Because you owe her. And you know you owe her. If any of you soldiers know about this case and are listening at the sound of my voice, you know what happened overseas and 414 and BSB 414 Hanau, Germany. You know what went down with all of the black managers in child care. Suddenly, they're all dismissed from their jobs. Suddenly, their secretaries are dismissed from their job. Then they went and tried to attack the providers to try to destroy their reputation. Well, it can't be done. Even if it is 20 years later, we gonna get satisfaction because Harriet's here now. Harriet's gonna tell the real story. And if you got any problems with it, see the ancestors. They all lined up behind me because you can't do nothing to me about telling the truth because it should have came out a long, long time ago. And sometimes you can't get a book out there fast enough, but you can get on these here airways and talk about the orator of what went down. That's what went down. And the family was suffering because of it. The family was broken because of it. And you don't know what you do to a family when you pull the support from up under them and tell them you're not going to send them back home and tell them they can't renew their orders and then treat them like they're an outside person where the Germans have to intervene to come in to aid and help them. Well, you were responsible for this family. When you shipped over their things, the immediate time you shipped their things over, you became responsible for this family. And anything you didn't give this family, you're in violation of. So that money that was sit on their table for offering a settlement is their money. Release it to them. Cut the check. That's all Omi wants me to say right now. And I'm about to bring this to an end because I'm a kind of too. I got plenty of work to do. I got many, many families to address. There's a lot of stuff going on y'all don't even know nothing about. And Harriet been called upon as one of the outstanding colonels to go and intervene on behalf of these families. And we have to speak up on behalf of them. And there's no two ways about it. When things go down like this and Harriet get hair tales of it, she gonna spill the beans, so to speak, and she gonna talk on it. And that's what Harriet doing right now. Because, see, I done went up under a lot of underground. But we got some underground situations right here in the United States. And we look at people that make their mind up to go abroad. I asked them, how could you sell out and go abroad? I was with the United States Army, and I didn't get nothing but some bloomers for it. There was many times when I was on that 54 line and fought for them, I wanted to take everything back. But once I made my commitment, I stayed the course. And Mrs. Garth and her family stayed the course, regardless of what they did abroad. They made sure that a lot of people were trained and they took care of those soldiers' family when they was out there on the front line. Now they have to be taken care of. Think about it and don't wait too long. Think about what should be done. And if you don't like what happened, then say something about it. Because the more people say something about it, the more it gets known and attention gets drawn to it. But wherever they cut that money and put it on the table, that money still exists. And it's in somebody's agenda and budget. It should be released to Mrs. Garth because she earned it for all that you put her through and the falseness that you created behind that whole scenario. Now, I'm going to go talk to Mrs. Garth. I'm going to let her know that I'm putting the ancestors on it. And the ancestors are going to take charge. There might be a part 3 of this. I don't know. But if we don't get no satisfaction, there might be a part 3. So we could talk on the subject and the topic. We want to thank each and every one of you. And under the African belief, Asante Sana, I want to thank you under the African tongue. Thank you so much for giving your undivided attention to this here theatrical drama. As I said, the names of the individuals have been protected. We have dispersed the Garth family because they gave permission to talk about this issue. We want you to know that when families are abroad and they're displaced and their income is taken and their transportation, it's called a genocide. And we have to prevent genocide from happening abroad or stateside. And we thank you so much. This has been Harriet Tubman narrating this show, theatrical drama, under the real Juneteenth, talking about the struggle that the black man and woman are still going through while keeping up the V sign. There is struggle at home and abroad. How can you go abroad and still have struggle and you're not getting struggle from the enemy? It's your own people that are causing you to have distress. We got to stop that. School teachers can't keep going abroad and putting their lives on the line. Some of them stay indefinitely. They could take an assignment for 3 years, but some stay indefinitely and come home on the summers. How is it that you can ask these school teachers to give up their life to go abroad and put themselves in danger of losing their income and their transportation, and then you don't want to pay them? Don't let Mrs. Garth get these school teachers together against all this information for those school teachers who are working abroad. They don't know about this. But see, this is going to help them to learn about it, to let them know if you got any problem, if they're doing things to you that is not humane and that is against HR, report it to HR and let them know, just like they tried to hide Mrs. Garth's records, hide all her medical records and wanted her to repeat all the medical records tests again. But thanks be to God, there's a great adversary that stepped in and made those records be reproduced so she wouldn't have to take those shots again, which are dangerous. Those kind of things are going on. And we're fighting under every hand. And the fight continues. And don't think just because Miss Garth came home that the fight is over. Some of those other women are still fighting and still suppressed and up under a lot of legalities. So please, please, don't forget to support your civilians that are abroad and that are writing and fighting and talking to the congressmen about help. Give them your support and undivided attention, because this thing is real. There's some suffering going on amongst the civilians. And this happened during 9/11. And don't you know that's a time of war? And because she's been damaged during a time of war, she is just like one of those soldiers on the front line who's been damaged. Now support her family and do what's necessary, military, because you know that something needs to be done, because that settlement is still on the table. She never apprehended, and you took it off the table, and it should be given back. And we know it, and you know it. We're counting on you to do the rightful thing in supporting this family. And at this point, Harriet Tubman is going to sign off by saying thank you for allowing me into your living rooms, your kitchens, your bedroom. Thank you for allowing me for sounding off my voice, because see, I ain't scared of them, because I got the support of the ancestors behind me. I told Omi, we're going to protect you so you ain't got to say nothing. I will speak on your behalf as an advocate, not as a lawyer, not as a judge, not as an EEOC officer, but as an advocate. And that's what I've done. I've done my job. Now, military, you do yours. Thank you very much. And Asante Sana, in the native tongue, thank you, thank you. Oh, double.